A woman may not see a man living alone as lonely. She may see something far more attractive, a man who has built a life he genuinely enjoys without needing anyone to complete it. And once you understand what that signals, the attraction starts to make a lot more sense. Topic 1. He doesn't need someone to complete his life. There's a huge difference between a man who wants a woman and a man who needs a woman to feel whole. When he lives alone and learns to be okay with his own company, that difference starts showing up in the way he talks, the choices he makes, and how he carries himself. He doesn't walk into a relationship thinking, finally, someone's going to save my life. He thinks, my life is already working, and it'd be great to share it with someone special. Sounds like a small shift in mindset, but it completely changes the energy he puts out. And funny enough, that's exactly when a lot of women start paying closer attention. Picture a guy who gets home after a rough day and knows exactly how to take care of himself. He makes dinner, throws on some music, hits the gym, reads a few pages of a book, or just chills on the couch without feeling like he has to text somebody every 5 minutes. That doesn't mean he's cold or antisocial. It means he's not desperate to escape the silence. A guy like that can invite a woman into his life, but he's not putting the weight of building that life on her shoulders. It's like a house that already has the lights on when someone shows up. She doesn't have to build the walls. She just has to decide if she wants to walk in. And here's a distinction a lot of guys only figure out after a few bad experiences. Neediness begs, confidence offers. A man who believes he desperately needs a partner tends to put up with things he normally wouldn't, simply because he's scared of going home alone. But a guy who's genuinely comfortable being on his own can say no when something doesn't line up with his values. He can be really into a woman without losing his own sense of direction. And that ability to stay grounded even while feeling attraction is about to reveal something even more powerful about him. Topic 2. His life has a rhythm of its own. When a man lives alone long enough, he starts to discover something most people never get taught. Life needs rhythm, not just company. He decides when he wakes up, what he eats, how he keeps the place, when he trains, even how he spends a random Tuesday night. Little by little, those small choices build a routine that's actually his. And a routine of his own sends a powerful message. This guy isn't sitting around waiting for someone else to show up so his life can start. He's already living it. That's where the small, seemingly boring details start to matter. A guy might keep his kitchen clean, cook a few meals at home, take care of his own clothes, hit the gym 3 or 4 times a week, and carve out a few hours for a hobby. Playing guitar, fishing, reading, working on some personal project. None of that sounds especially sexy on its own, but together it tells a story. When a woman notices he knows how to run his own life, she's not just seeing a guy who happens to live alone. She's seeing competence, discipline, and stability. And let's be honest, being able to change a light bulb without turning it into a national crisis is already a solid start. But there's an even deeper layer to that routine. When a man builds his own rhythm, he stops making every decision based on other people's approval. He can enjoy hanging out with friends, but also spend a Friday night at home without feeling like he's missing out. He can be ambitious at work without letting his job become his whole identity. He can take care of his body without living in front of the mirror chasing validation. And the more consistent that life becomes, the more one question naturally comes up. What happens when a man doesn't just learn to live alone, but actually starts to enjoy his own company? Topic 3. He becomes comfortable with his own company. There's a kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. It shows up when a man can spend a few hours alone without feeling like he has to fill the silence with notifications, TV, or nonstop conversation. He can grab a coffee, eat dinner at a nice restaurant, or just take a walk around the block without worrying about looking busy. For him, being alone stopped being a problem that needs fixing. And once a man reaches that point, something shifts in how he shows up in the world. That shows up inside relationships too. A man who's comfortable in his own skin doesn't send 10 texts because a woman took a while to reply, and he doesn't read every little silence as rejection. He can give space without turning distance into drama. If she's busy, he keeps living his own day. If she needs some time to herself, he doesn't spiral into panic. That calmness doesn't mean he's not interested. Quite the opposite. It means his interest hasn't wrecked his balance. It's the difference between saying, "I like you," and without ever saying it out loud, giving off, "I need you to like me so I can feel okay." Think about two guys facing the exact same situation. A woman cancels a date last minute. One immediately starts wondering what he did wrong, blows up her phone trying to win back her attention, and spends the whole night imagining worst-case scenarios. The other one takes it in stride, responds respectfully, and goes ahead with whatever he already had planned for the night. He might feel a little disappointed. He's only human. But he doesn't throw away his own stability over it. That ability to stay centered gets built exactly in the moments when nobody's watching, and that's where another interesting effect kicks in. The less a man needs to prove he's interesting, the more naturally interesting he tends to become. Topic 4. Independence changes the way he chooses women. When a man is genuinely comfortable living on his own, the way he chooses a partner starts to change. He's no longer just looking for a woman who's willing to be with him. He starts paying attention to whether she actually fits the life he's already built. Sounds simple, but it completely shifts his mindset. Instead of thinking, "How do I get her to like me?" he starts thinking, "Do I actually like who I am when I'm with her?" That small shift puts him back in charge of his own choices, without turning the relationship into some kind of power struggle. That's why an independent man can come across as more selective, even when he's not trying to be. He starts noticing things he might have overlooked before: how she treats other people, whether there's respect during a disagreement, whether their values line up, and whether being around her brings peace or constant chaos. He's not looking for a perfect woman. Nobody's perfect. But he can look for one who's emotionally mature, kind, and compatible with his goals. If health matters to him, he might want someone who also takes care of her body. If he loves traveling and exploring new places, he might look for a partner who shares that same curiosity. It's not about building some impossible checklist. It's about understanding what actually matters. And there's an interesting side effect once he starts choosing this way. He stops treating rejection as some verdict on his own worth. If a woman doesn't show interest, he can accept that they just weren't a match and keep moving on with his life. That's very different from shutting down or faking indifference. It's about understanding that two good people can still not work as a couple. When a man reaches that level of maturity, he's no longer looking for someone to fill an empty space. He's looking for someone who can walk beside him. And that quiet shift tends to spark a curiosity he might not even realize he's creating. Topic 5. There is a mystery behind a man who lives alone. There's something curious about a man who lives alone. People can't immediately see everything going on in his life. A woman might walk into his place and notice a routine, some interests, books, workout gear, travel photos, or some project he's been working on for years. And suddenly a quiet question pops up. Who is this guy when nobody's watching? And that question carries weight, because curiosity tends to grow exactly where a few gaps are left open. But real mystery isn't about hiding information or trying to seem unavailable. A guy who gives vague answers just to seem interesting usually just comes off as weird. Healthy mystery comes from having a life that doesn't need to be explained in full in 5 minutes. He can talk about a trip he took, a hobby he's into, or a project he's building, but he doesn't need to turn every conversation into a highlight reel about himself. He leaves some stories to be discovered naturally, like a good book that doesn't spoil the ending in chapter 1. Picture two guys meeting a woman for the first time. One spends the entire night trying to prove he's interesting, bringing up every achievement, showing every photo, explaining why he deserves to be admired. The other one just talks, listens, laughs, shares a few things, and doesn't feel the need to fill every second with information about himself. He's got plenty of stories, but he's not desperate to impress. And when the conversation ends, she might still be thinking about a few things she'd love to find out about him. Because now there's a bigger question sitting behind that curiosity. What would it actually be like to step into the life of a man who already built so much, without needing anyone else to build it for him. Topic 6. He builds a life. Women can actually enter. One of the biggest mistakes a man can make after learning to live alone is turning independence into isolation. The point was never to build a fortress nobody can get into. It's to build a home where there's room for someone to walk in without having to tear everything down and start over. A man can have his schedule, his friends, his hobbies, his goals, and still know how to make space for a woman. That combination is powerful because it sends a simple message. My life works, but there's room in it for you. In practice, that means he doesn't abandon everything the moment a relationship starts. If he trains in the mornings, he keeps training. If he plays golf on Saturdays, he keeps that time. If he sets aside a few nights for friends or a personal project, he doesn't have to erase those parts of who he is. At the same time, he learns to make healthy compromises, like setting aside a night for dinner together, planning a trip, or simply showing up when she needs him. It's like a well-organized house. The rooms are still there, but there's enough space for someone else to feel at home too. And that might be one of the most important differences between independence and selfishness. The independent man says, I've got my own life, and I want to share part of it with you. The selfish man says, this is how my life is. Take it or leave it. Looks similar on the surface, but emotionally they're worlds apart. A woman shouldn't feel like she's invading a man's territory. She should feel like she's been invited to be part of something that already has value. And when that life is built with consistency, signs of maturity start showing up that no amount of talk can fake for long. Topic 7. Living alone forces him to grow up. Living alone puts a man face to face with small responsibilities that nobody else can handle for him. If the sink's full of dishes, he's the one who washes them. If the fridge is empty, he's the one who goes shopping. If something breaks, he's the one who has to figure it out or call someone to fix it. Sounds trivial, but that's exactly the unglamorous everyday stuff that builds real maturity. Nobody claps for a guy because he paid a bill on time or cleaned the bathroom. But doing those things over and over teaches him something important. He learns to trust himself. That independence shows up in deeper areas too. He has to manage money, keep track of appointments, take care of his health, make decisions, and deal with the consequences of those decisions without someone constantly reminding him what needs to get done. A guy might start with something as simple as setting a monthly budget, cooking a few meals at home, and keeping up a workout routine. But the ripple effect goes way beyond those tasks. He starts realizing he doesn't need to wait around for someone to show up and put his life in order. And that quiet sense of responsibility tends to show up later in how he treats a woman, especially when a problem comes up. Picture a relationship where everything goes wrong on the same day. The car breaks down, work gets stressful, and a plan has to get canceled. The immature guy might panic and look for someone to fix everything for him. The one who learned to take care of his own life tends to take a breath, size up the situation, and look for a solution. That doesn't mean he never asks for help. Strong men ask for help too, when they need it. The difference is that asking for help is a choice, not a dependency. And when a woman sees that kind of stability play out in real life, she starts to see something that goes way beyond the fact that he simply lives alone. Topic 8. The most attractive part isn't that he lives alone. Just living alone by itself doesn't make anyone attractive. A man can live alone and still spend his days complaining, neglecting his health, letting his place fall apart, and desperately looking for someone to fill the void. In that case, the address changed, but he's still emotionally dependent on someone else to feel okay. The real difference is in how he chooses to live when nobody's supervising him. That's when independence stops being just a circumstance and starts becoming part of his character. A woman can pick up on this through details a man might not even think are important. She notices whether he treats people well, when he has nothing to gain from it, whether he keeps his commitments, whether he takes care of himself, whether he has goals, and whether he can enjoy a quiet night without needing constant attention. Maybe he's got a simple apartment, a dog, a few books on a shelf, and a routine that looks pretty ordinary. But there's one key difference. He respects his own life. And once a man gets to that point, he doesn't need to convince anyone he's interesting. His choices start doing that work for him. Maybe that's why some women are drawn to men who live alone, not because of the solitude itself, but because of the proof that this man learned to stay whole without needing company to function. He doesn't see a relationship as an emergency exit. He sees it as an opportunity to share something he's already built. He can love deeply, fully commit, and build a real connection without losing his own identity in the process. And maybe that's the part almost nobody explains. The woman isn't necessarily attracted to his solitary life. She might be attracted to the man he became while learning how to live well on his own. Conclusion. At the end of the day, living alone was never really the secret. What actually changes how a man is perceived is what he does with that freedom. He can use his own company to build discipline, take care of his body, get his life in order, develop real interests, strengthen his confidence, and discover who he really is when there's nobody around to impress. And maybe that's the question every man should ask himself. If nobody showed up tomorrow to fill that space, would he still be proud of the life he's building today? Because there's a massive difference between being alone and being lost. A man can eat alone, travel alone, live alone, and still have a life full of purpose, friendships, goals, and experiences. And when a woman steps into that life, she doesn't have to carry the weight of saving him from loneliness. She gets to simply share moments with someone who already learned how to stand on his own 2 feet. So it's worth taking a good look at your own routine and asking, what do your house, your habits, and your choices say about you when nobody's watching? And more importantly, are you building a life a woman would actually want to be part of? If this got you looking at independence in a different way, don't wait until tomorrow to start changing something. Get your routine in order, take better care of your space, develop an interest that's truly yours, build up your body, protect your peace, and stop looking to someone else for what should start inside you. And if you want to keep learning how to become a more confident, more mature, more interesting man, without ever pretending to be someone you're not, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We've still got a lot to talk about.